Welcome to the IT Cert Doctor. Today we're going to talk about the A+ 2011-01 exam, the Core 1 exam. Today we're going to go over the various components of a computer. Now we don't have a case, we're going to demonstrate this outside of a case. So the first component we have is the processor. The processor is basically the brain of the computer. This is the thing that makes the machine think. This in particular is an Intel i9. This component is the most important for installing carefully inside of your computer. The reason is because on the motherboard, the socket has these little itty-bitty pins that make contact with each of these little gold panels on the processor. If you bend any one of these single pins or break one off, the entire motherboard will break. It will be no longer functional. You need to be extra careful when installing your processor. And that's it. That's how you install your processor. The next component is the motherboard itself. The motherboard is sort of the body of the computer. The motherboard is the component that connects all of the different components together and allows them to communicate with each other. Next component we have is the hard drive. Now this particular hard drive is an M.2 NVMe SSD. The brand is a Samsung 960 Pro. It stores your data, so when you shut off the PC, this is the device right here that saves your data. And it's pretty simple. You just plug it in here, and that's it. You have a functional hard drive. The next component is the RAM. We have 2 sticks of RAM here. These particular sticks of RAM have little heat sinks on them, and that's just to absorb the heat when they're under load. These are more gaming type RAM sticks. And the RAM just goes right here. We have 4 slots, but we have 2 sticks of RAM, so you just insert them like so. And there you have your RAM. Next component we're going to talk about is the graphics card. Now, this is an upper end, kind of a gaming graphics card. I don't know if I'd say it's necessarily high end, but definitely more than the average user is going to have. And the graphics card is actually going to plug into one of these PCIe slots right here. And so you would just take it, massive though it is, and you just plug it in, and that's it. It plugs into your motherboard, now it works. The next component we're going to talk about is the heatsink. Now, some heat sinks are just a block of aluminum, just a little chunk of aluminum, and you just stick it right on top of the processor. And all it does is it absorbs the heat, and the little fins redirect the air, the hot air, out of the PC. This particular heatsink is a liquid-cooled heatsink, and so what you do is you take this component and put it on top of your CPU, and the liquid carries the heat away from the processor into this component, which is a radiator. And then what it does is the radiator sucks in cool air through the fans, cools down the liquid here, and then the cool liquid comes back down to the processor to absorb more of that heat. So again, this is more of a gaming heat sink, a more elaborate heat sink, but a heat sink nonetheless. The final component we're going to talk about is the PSU, or the power supply unit. The power supply unit has one job, and that is to supply power to the motherboard. And so you have various cables that you plug in. You plug in a power cable here. You would plug in power cables. You plug them into your graphics card here. Another cable in for the processor down here. You may have some other connectors depending on your motherboard type. One important thing, this isn't tested, but just something that you should know. These are called rails. The rails that come with your power supply unit should not be swapped with another power supply unit. It is not recommended. Now, can you, in certain circumstances, perhaps? This is probably one of the most dangerous things to swap out from a power supply. So when you buy your PSU, the bag of rails that it comes with, bag of cables, power cables it comes with, those are the cables that you should use with your power supply. Otherwise, you run the danger of frying your motherboard, or worse, electrocuting yourself. And that's it. That is everything that goes inside of a motherboard. If you need to add more components, let's say you need to add another network cable, you need to add Wi-Fi, you need to add Bluetooth, any of those things that you might need to add to your computer, you plug them in to these PCIe slots here. Those allow you to add functionality to your motherboard. That's it. Those are all the components of your motherboard. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, and we hope to see you in the next video.